I've heard a little bit about over the last few years, but I'm not sure I really believed all of it. I guess I do now. Here's the story behind San Saba's Rogan Field. San Saba's high school football stadium is officially named Rogan Field in honor of Dr. J.D. Rogan.
He was pretty big. He was one of the pioneer doctors in town. He was very active in the community. He was part of the Methodist Church. I think he was one of the first treasurers, something in that aspect. So he's very, very highly thought of and real important to the early stages of San Saba.
The Rogans were a family that owned this property, and they donated it, I guess, to the school or the city, whatever, and with the understanding that it would carry their name.
The family actually sold the property to the school district in 1935 for $10. The property was becoming an eyesore to the community because it was a rundown graveyard.
This was a graveyard, and really and truly, I guess, the people that were buried here were probably Civil War soldiers, maybe some early families.
A city ordinance in 1878 called for any future burials to only take place at a new city cemetery.
This was just out of date. It wasn't being upkept as well. That was part of the beginnings of Rogan Field.
Dr. Rogan wanted the land to be useful to the community again. At the time, San Saba didn't have a football field. So in June of 1935, the graveyard became a gridiron.
Whenever they decided that this was going to be a football field, well, they took most, but not all, of the inhabitants of this graveyard and moved them out to the city cemetery. There were a few that weren't claimed. I don't know the exact number, but I would assume less than a dozen.
Old timers talk about some of those football players at that time actually come and help remove some of the bodies. I don't know, I think that was in June, July, so it was hot regardless what the weather was. So I've heard that. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but it makes for a great story. So
for years, the San Saba community ignored Rogan Field's past, but when Brad McCoy, the father of former UT standout quarterback Colt McCoy, coached the Armadillos, he brought it back to life.
I mean, it was mentioned, but there was no sign, and it wasn't really advertised much. And when Brad got here, Coach McCoy, he made a big deal out of it, and it ended up being in Sports Illustrated because it's kind of unique to have a former graveyard be a football field, I suppose. He's kind of like the 12th man at A&M. I mean, every now and then somebody trips out here, and some strange things have happened through the years, and he exploited that a little bit.
You have to just go with it because of the situation. We've seen guys just flat out fall. I know I've personally stepped and fallen before and yelled at the ground and reminded them that we're purple and gold and they're tripping the wrong guys.
Some of the field's past is simply impossible to ignore.
I had an athletic period down here last period, and I looked under the hedge, and there was a ball joint from a human that came up from the water. So I found it and I gave it to my head coach that was here at the time, and I don't know what he did with it, but it was definitely human, there was no doubt.
Today, San Saba uses the field's history to their advantage, proudly hanging a sign that says, "Welcome to the graveyard" on game days.
Every time we win a football game, we've got some headstones, and we'll put, rest in peace Goldthwait, and put the date and put the score on there, or rest in peace Mason. We like to beat those two couple schools.
While schools all across the state continue to install turf, Rogan Field will likely forever stick with grass.
You've got to have a drainage system for turf, and you've got to dig down 5 or 6, 7 foot. Well, if you start digging down 5, 6, 7 foot, you're going to start hitting graves, and so that's a whole nother, you can't do it because it's a hiccup. We would figure out how many actual graves are here, but I don't think that's something you want to really, just leave it alone, let them stay.